Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, with my Week 11 2015 NFL predictions. Well, this week has been the most frustrating week of the entire season for me. I am coming into this week with the worst record I have had the entire season. I am today sitting before you with a pathetic 5-8 record. And now overall for the year, I am 85-58. So I'm still above 500, but this is definitely a huge low point for me in the entire season. But there were so many games that could have turned this week from a real pathetic week to another decent week that I have been having. I actually wish that I was 8-6 this week, but I am not going to be. But looking at the games, you look at Green Bay lost to Detroit. For the first time in a near quarter century, the Detroit Lions went into Lambeau Field and beat the Packers, snapping their own, by the way, 13-game winning streak at home dating back to last year. It's unbelievable how, after all what the Lions had went through in the bye week, after getting thumped by the Chiefs by 35 points, 45-10, they fire their general manager. They fire their team president. They shift everything around. It's all this bleakness. Matthew Stafford and Calvin Johnson's future in Detroit are unclear at this moment in time after this year. And what do? They do something that, in my opinion, was the biggest upset in the NFL this year with that circumstance and with the history of that rivalry. And if I'm a Packers fan, I'm hitting the panic button, because for the first time in the Aaron Rodgers era, you have lost 3 straight games. And these are games that you're not really doing well. You are, besides the game, yesterday's game against Detroit, you've given up an average of 145 rushing yards per game. You have let ground games dominate you. And it's incredibly frustrating, because going into the Broncos game just a few weeks ago, this was the number 1 scoring defense in the entire National Football League. And in the span of 3 weeks, their defense has gone from being impressive to now being average to below average once again. And also, just when I watched some of the Packers game, or when I was looking at some of the highlights and some of the numbers, they have no balance. Eddie Lacy, I know, was not active for the game because of a groin injury, but James Starks only ran it about 12 or 13 times for about 60 yards. And Aaron Rodgers threw it 61 times. And all I know in the NFL is that I would want to play. You have to have balance in a team. You can't have your quarterback almost doubling the attempts your running back has. And when Aaron Rodgers throws it over 60 times a game, I just don't like that stat, because that's showing that, and I know the Packers really haven't been effective in the running game, because Eddie Lacy has taken a huge step back this year. But still, you got to try to commit more to the run than that. But, by the way, I digress. The Packers fans should be very concerned and be hitting the panic button, because this could go into a huge free fall that might get the Packers out of the playoffs. But on the other hand, I want to give a huge congratulations to the Minnesota Vikings, who for the first time since 2009, for the first time in 6 years, they are 5 games above 500. They have won 5 straight. And Minnesota is a team that finally, after their win against the Raiders, which was very decisive, by the way, I was very frustrated how the Raiders played, because I thought they would have had a better game, especially in front of their home crowd. But when you have the number 1 scoring defense right now, which they have, and you have the number 1 rushing offense in the league, which they have, with Adrian Peterson, who is the leading running back in the NFL statistically, with almost 1,000 yards, it's unbelievable how well this Vikings team is playing. And I guarantee you, nobody thought that this Vikings team would ever have an opportunity to be first place in the NFC North. It's unbelievable that they're in first place. And Teddy Bridgewater, you know what? I'm going to say it right now. I might get some unfavorable, comments or negative backlash. He is, as of today, the best quarterback in that conference, or in that draft class of 2014. He is better than Derek Carr. And I know people are going to say, well, you look at Derek Carr's numbers, man, he's had a phenomenal statistical year. I get that, yeah, absolutely. That Derek Carr has, revitalized this Raiders team. And even though they've lost two straight, he's given the Raiders some confidence in the quarterback. But you know what you need to do in the NFL? You need to win. And with Teddy Bridgewater right now holding a 13-8 record in 21 starts, that's what Bridgewater's doing. He's definitely not going to give you a very consistent range like Carr has, because Bridgewater's had some really good games, he's had some really bad games, and he's had a lot of average games. So he definitely is a roller coaster kind of thing. But the one thing Teddy Bridgewater's been able to do with his team is lead them to victories. As the quarterback, I know the defense and Adrian Peterson deserves more credit than Bridgewater. I completely agree with that, but I have to give Teddy his due. Because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They trusted this kid with the 32nd overall pick in the draft a couple years ago, taken away from the Seahawks, and it was a great investment. Because right now, he is on the verge of getting this Vikings team to the playoffs in his second year, which would be an incredible accomplishment. And you look at some of the other close games that went awry. I was actually at my first Ravens game yesterday when we played the Jaguars. Oh, that was so heartbreaking. But again, as a Ravens fan this year, I'm used to it. All 7 of our losses have been by a combined 32 points. That's less than 5 points a game, ladies and gentlemen. Our 2 wins were by 6 points. So, if you want to put it in that perspective, we were basically 2 kicks away from being 0-9. And we're literally 7 touchdowns away, either by offense getting one or defense stopping one from being 9-0. I basically call ourselves Chargers East. We're the San Diego Chargers East. Because basically our 2 teams have been struggling all year. And it's been the same constant. They've had tons of injuries on the offensive line, on the defense, in the receiving core. They have 2 solid quarterbacks that have, stood the test of time, and they're grizzled veterans now. But it's just something where we can compete against anybody in the NFL. Both teams can. But the one thing we cannot do is close games. So that's tough. And also I want to congratulate the Carolina Panthers and New England Patriots for continuing their undefeated streaks to move to 9-0. But also there was a big loss for the Patriots. Julian Edelman broke his leg, and he will be out for a good portion of the remainder of the season. They hope to get him back by the end of the year, and possibly they'll get him back by the playoffs. So we'll see with that, but I wish Julian a speedy recovery. And before I get into my picks, the New Orleans Saints, New York Giants, Pittsburgh Steelers, and Cleveland Browns are all on bye this week. This is the last week of the bye period. So if you have guys like Drew Brees, Mark Ingram, Brandon Cooks, Willie Snead, Eli Manning, Odell Beckham, the Giants defense, Big Ben, Antonio Brown, D'Angelo Williams, Martavius Bryant, the Steelers defense, Crowell, Johnson, Manziel, Browns defense. If you have any of those players on your fantasy teams, bench them because they will not be playing this week. Alright, time for my picks and thoughts on each game. This Thursday, when the 2-7 Tennessee Titans go to the 3-6 Jacksonville Jaguars, I'm going to take the Jacksonville Jaguars. And then on Sunday, when the 4-5 St. Louis Rams go to the 2-7 Baltimore Ravens, I'm going to take the St. Louis Rams. When the 4-5 Washington Redskins go to the 9-0 Carolina Panthers, I'm going to take the Carolina Panthers. When the 7-2 Denver Broncos go to the 4-5 Chicago Bears, I'm going to take the Chicago Bears. When the 4-5 Oakland Raiders go to the 2-7 Detroit Lions, I'm going to take the Oakland Raiders. When the 6-3 Green Bay Packers go to the 7-2 Minnesota Vikings, I'm going to take the Minnesota Vikings. When the 4-5 Indianapolis Colts go to the 6-3 Atlanta Falcons, I'm going to take the Indianapolis Colts. When the 2-7 Dallas Cowboys go to the 4-5 Miami Dolphins, I'm going to take the Dallas Cowboys. When the 4-5 Tampa Bay Buccaneers go to the 4-5 Philadelphia Eagles, I'm going to take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. When the 5-4 New York Jets go to the 3-6 or 4-5 Houston Texans, I'm going to take the New York Jets. When the 4-5 Kansas City Chiefs go to the 2-7 San Diego Chargers, I'm going to take the Kansas City Chiefs. When the 3-6 San Francisco 49ers go to the 4-5 Seattle Seahawks, I'm going to take the Seattle Seahawks. And then the Sunday night game, when the 9-0 or 8-1 Cincinnati Bengals go to the 7-2 Arizona Cardinals, I'm going to take the Arizona Cardinals. And then on the Monday night game, when the 5-4 Buffalo Bills go to the 9-0 New England Patriots, I'm going to take the New England Patriots. Alright, time for my thoughts on each game. Tennessee at Jacksonville. This is a game that, for some odd reason, for the last few years, is always on Thursday Night Football around this time of year. I almost feel like it's a requirement for this team, for these two teams, to play each other just to have to tell them to say, hey, you have a primetime game on TV. You know, in their contracts. Both these teams are about the same. Tennessee, from the numbers I saw, they played against Carolina, they had some flashes, but they were just clearly outmatched by Carolina. Dexter McCluster had a big 25-yard run. Mariota threw for about 200 yards, a touchdown and a pick. So we had an average to a below-average game. These are rookie going against Carolina's top 5 defense. And they also, Justin Hunter broke his leg, and he'll be out for the rest of the season. And I just look at Jacksonville, and maybe this is just also because I know they beat Baltimore. I just look at Jacksonville and say they've been way more competitive this year. And with the way they played, they could have easily won their last 3 games, because if Bortles and that team doesn't throw 3 turnovers doesn't commit 3 turnovers in the fourth quarter, the Jets lose that game, because the Jags actually outgained them by over 200 yards in that game. So when I look at the Jags, the two main things I look at this game is that the Jags are at home, and the Titans are just battling injuries. The Titans haven't had Jason McCourty all year. Kendall Hunter's been dealing with an injury, so he'll probably be out another game. Kendall Wright. I'm sorry, Kendall Hunter's a running back for the Niners. Kendall Wright has been battling an injury, and he'll be out for another game. And just with that, I just think Jacksonville can get another victory. Jacksonville and Tennessee have split this series last year, and I would not be surprised if the Titans win this game. But I'm going to take the Jags because they're healthier right now, and they're at home. Those are the only 2 reasons I could legitimately say that the Jaguars are going to beat the Titans. Could the Titans win this game? Absolutely. But I'm going to take the Jags just because they've been more competitive, and I like their momentum right now than what Tennessee's going through with Malarkey and his team. St. Louis at Baltimore. St. Louis laid a giant egg this week against the Chicago Bears. I found an incredible stat that just baffled my mind, and it kind of showed how lack of receiving core Nick Foles has. Yesterday, against the Chicago Bears, Todd Gurley was the leading rusher with 45 yards. In the same instance, Todd Gurley was also the leading receiver with 44 yards. So let me repeat that one more time. Todd Gurley had 45 yards rush, and he was leading rusher. At the same time, he caught 44 yards passing. He was the leading receiver. When your running back can literally almost match his running total, and he can't, and no other receiver can outdo that, that's a problem. Because to me, that shows a lack of offense around your quarterback. And also, I look at this game and say, Nick Foles has done absolutely nothing for basically the entire year. In 8 of his 9 games this season, he has thrown 1 or no touchdowns. He's thrown 0 touchdowns in 3 of his last 4 games. The best game he had was the game against Arizona, where he threw for only 171 yards, but he threw for 3 touchdowns. But I'm going to take the Rams to win this game just because their defense should be able to get through our offensive line and get to Flacco. You have Quinn and Donald and Brockers, and that's just a loaded defensive line going up against Baltimore, who's not a bad offensive line. I think they're about average. They've only given up about 20, 21 sacks, maybe a little less than that on Flacco. So they're average. You know, he gets hit a little bit, but not like Russell Wilson or Kaepernick, where he's not getting hit every single play. But there's just a feeling with me about this Ravens team. Like I said before, we've lost all 7 games by 32 points combined. We're just going to find a way to lose this game. I don't know if it's going to be the offense. I don't know if it's going to be the kicking. I don't know if it's going to be the punting. But looking at the Rams, looking at the receiving corps that they have, the receiving matchup is about equal. Okay, and you can say, well, Tavon Austin's better than this guy. Well, they're about, these are guys that outside of maybe Wes Welker, just because of his history with the Patriots, I don't think anybody could name one receiver for both teams outside of their respective cities. Yeah, you could do a man on the street. And literally, if you ask anybody outside of Baltimore and outside of St. Louis, name me 2 or 3 wide receivers on the Ravens and Rams right now, I don't think anybody could do it. So that pretty much is a wash out the window. That's about push right there. I think the Rams have a little bit of a better secondary. They have one of the best they have one of the best passers in the league. They're top 5 in sacks. I think they have about 28 or 29, which is impressive. And they have Todd Gurley, who, even though, again, he's struggled over the last 2 weeks, he's had about 125 yards in his last 2 games, which is way down from his average that he had in his first 4. But I think that he'll be able to run through our defense pretty well. And I just think just by the skin of their teeth, or just, again, in another Raven-type game, we're going to lose in an amazing fashion. Or we're going to lose in a close fashion. And also, the Ravens have lost 3 games at home already. I cannot remember the last time the Ravens have lost 3 home games. For anybody out there watching, please let me know when was the last time it happened. I think it was 2007 when we went 5-11 the last time that happened, but we'll have to wait and see. And also, that was only John Harbaugh's 3rd loss in November. He was November and December. He is 13-2. He was 13-2 going into November. So that's I'm going to take the Rams to beat the Ravens. The Panthers over the Redskins. I have to say this. The Washington Redskins are starting to gain a solid home field advantage. They have, in their last 4 games, won their last 4 games, and Kirk Cousins has played very effective football. He has thrown 9 touchdowns to no interceptions in his last 4 home games. The game against Miami, that doesn't, that was the only bad home game of the year. And they put up 47 points on the Saints defense, who right now are looking just as bad or even worse than their 2012 defense, which was put down in the history of the NFL as the worst defense in NFL history. I believe Sean Payton will opt out of his contract after this year. I do believe Rob Ryan will be fired, and Drew Brees might be looking somewhere else to play because I don't think he wants to be around for another rebuilding phase. But while at the same time that Kirk Cousins has been so dominant at home the last 4 games, 9 touchdowns to no interceptions, his road record, he is winless on the road, and he has 4 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. He's thrown an interception in every road game, 2 in 3 of the 4. So, with that, going up against Carolina, who are coming in with their 13-game winning streak at home. Also, Carolina has never lost to Washington in Carolina. That's a fact. And I just look at it that way and say that Carolina should be able to win another game. Can the Redskins put up a fight? Yeah, they can. Their run defense is pretty solid. You're going up against Storton Newton, but you're going up against Storton Newton. That's a tough 2-headed monster to go after. And I just feel that this Carolina team, they find ways to win. And I've said this a couple weeks ago in one of my videos. They get teams to play Carolina football, which is very rugged, smash mouth, defensive, run-based football. They're going to get physical with you. They're going to get in your face. They're going to be tough. And I just don't know what the Redskins have around them. You're going to have Josh Norman, who right now is one of the best corners in the league, maybe even the best corner right now for this year or today in the league. He'll be able to shut down Garcon or Jackson. Tillman can do a solid job on the other end. And I just think the Panthers will continue to win and go on to their first 10-0 start in franchise history. And that's unbelievable. That you would if you would tell me that the Carolina Panthers would be 10-0, I would have laughed in your face after the barely getting in their first last year. The fact that they've won 14 straight, if they do beat the Redskins, it's incredible because nobody would have thought that would happen. But again, I'm going to take the Carolina Panthers because that's I said to you about Cousins. I don't trust him on the road. He has never been a really good road quarterback. He has no wins on the road, and he has 4 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. Where in the last 4 home games, he's thrown 9 touchdowns to no interceptions. So again, that's what we're going to take the Carolina Panthers to beat the Washington Redskins. The Chicago Bears over the Denver Broncos. The John Fox return game. John Fox gets to play his former team in the Denver Broncos. Chicago has been an incredible story. I can't tell you how shocked I am about how good they've played. Jay Cutler is having one of the best years of his career. With nobody. He's right now completing about 64. Let me look here. Jay Cutler right now is completing... Sorry, something came in the way. Jay Cutler right now is completing 64.2% of his passes. He has 13 touchdowns compared to 5 interceptions. That's unbelievable, folks. That Jay Cutler is doing this stuff with the lack of talent that he's had around him. He hasn't had Alshon Jeffrey for games. He hasn't had Eddie Royal for games. He hasn't had Matt Forte the last 2 games. He's had offensive line issues. And this team has been competitive. Their last 2 losses, besides their 4 wins, they won 4 of the last 6, and the other 2 losses were by field goals. This is unbelievable stuff we're seeing out of the Chicago Bears. And kudos to Jeremy Langford too. What a great showing he's having, filling in for Matt Forte. He's been an incredible stud and an incredible weapon out of the receiving game. He actually led the team yesterday in receiving of over 100 yards receiving, even though 83 of them did come again on a 1 pass. But the Bears have played really solid football. All 3 of their losses, besides the one that Jay didn't play, or the ones that Jay couldn't finish, have been by a touchdown or less. And I just feel confident in this Bears. They're at home. They've got some momentum. They got some confidence. And I'm looking at the Denver Broncos. And I am going to say this. First of all, I'll say all the positive stuff first. Congratulations to Peyton Manning for passing the all-time yardage record in the NFL. That is a tremendous accomplishment. He is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And yesterday, once again, put his name in the record book that I don't think anybody will reach. Being said that, Peyton Manning, I believe, has just played the worst game of his career. Ladies and gentlemen, here is his stat line. He went 5 for 20 for 35 yards and 4 interceptions. He now leads the league in interceptions by far, more than anybody in the league, with 15. It got so bad that he got pulled for Brock Osweiler, who did score a touchdown, which was good for him. But there was a part of me going, and I know that they're like, well, we don't want Peyton getting hurt out there. And I know Peyton Manning, he deserves to be able to ride out, if this is his final year, out in the sunset. But the Broncos are in a must-win situation. And I believe that give Brock a chance. Because I know they're 7-2, but But if you look at their offense and defense, the defense and special teams have carried Peyton the whole year. Basically. And to me, this is just something where I think they're going to start Osweiler this week, just because I don't know if you could put Peyton back in after the year he's had. He's had too many games, and I know it's like, well, he got us to 7 of our 9 wins. Yeah, I know that, but he probably deserves about 20 to 25% of the credit overall. I know he's had a few good moments. He's had a few good games. He had the big game against Green Bay. But after playing the way he did against Indy and throwing 6 picks in his last 2 games, I just don't know how you can do it. So I'm going to take the Bears because Jay Cutler, as crazy as it's going to sound, I think Jay Cutler will outplay Peyton Manning. DeMarcus Ware, he had a back injury, and Talib will be back. He was serving a 1-game suspension for the eye gouge that he pulled on Dwayne Allen. So that'll be definitely huge for the Bears. But the Bears have been able to work with this offense. And I think at home, with the confidence they have, I believe they have enough talent, and the Broncos are struggling enough right now that they are not going to win this game and drop to 7-3 and really put the Broncos fans on notice, saying we could be losing this division and we might need to make a change. So again, that's why I'm going to take the Chicago Bears to beat the Denver Broncos. Oakland at Detroit. Again, like I said earlier in the video, Detroit had a massive victory. The last time Detroit won in Lambeau, Brett Favre was a Falcon. So just think about that, folks. That's how long it's been since that. But Oakland, I was disappointed in Oakland. Their defense special teams gave up way too much for me to have any confidence in them. But I'm looking at Detroit, and I just don't know if I can believe in them to say that, hey, they can pull off 2 big wins that they shouldn't have. Amir Abdullah and Bell, they had very little on the ground. But again, I guess Detroit's success is through the air and not the ground. So, and Oakland has one of the worst pass defenses in the league. So definitely Stafford could have his opportunities. But I just think Oakland, they just have more confidence, and they've looked more impressive this entire year than what Detroit has. And to me, that's the thing I'm going to hold on to. Is that the Oakland Raiders will be able to, with just the talent they have, and hopefully the confidence they have, even though it's kind of shaken right now, with 2 back-to-back losses to the Steelers and Vikings. No shame in that, by the way. But I'm going to take the Oakland Raiders to beat the Lions just because I just believe that Oakland still has something to fight for. If they are truly not the Raiders that we've known for the last decade, they will find a way to win this game. If they don't, then you can believe that the Raiders still probably are the Raiders. But again, it should be a competitive game, and kudos to the Lions for getting that big win, but I'm going to take the Raiders just because I have confidence in them. Because I think they're different this year. So that's why I'm going to take the Raiders to beat the Lions. Minnesota over Green Bay. To me, when you look at these 2 teams, you're looking at the crossroads of the year for the Vikings and Packers. I believe if the Minnesota Vikings can beat the Green Bay Packers in Minnesota, the Vikings are winning this division. Because I do not believe the Green Bay Packers will have enough. They still have to play Arizona. And so do the Cardinals, or so do the Vikings. But I think Green Bay's schedule will be very tough. And this is just a point where I don't know if Green Bay can pick itself up. And then also, like I said, Minnesota has one of the best combos in stats all year. They have the number 1 rushing offense and the number 1 scoring defense. Adrian Peterson's leading the league in rushing. What a surprise. He's definitely, to me, the number 1 candidate for comeback player of the year. Because after the year he had last year, of all the scandal around him, for him to be leading the league in rushing and leading his team back to a dominant perspective, I'm really happy for him. And I just look at the Vikings. They haven't lost a home game all year. And it goes back to what I said earlier. You're facing the number one leading rusher in the league, and you're taking on the 24th ranked run defense that in the last 2 games going before the game against Detroit, they've given up an average of 145 rushing yards per game to both the Broncos and the Panthers. And I believe with the Vikings, with what they have, they can do the same thing. Can Green Bay win this game? Yeah, they can. Green Bay has won since 2009, I believe, 4 of the last 6 games in Minnesota. Yeah, I believe Green Bay's won 4 of the last 6 games in Minnesota. 4 of the last 6 or 5 of the last 7. Yeah, they've won 5 of the last 7 games in Minnesota. But I just think this Vikings team, there's something about it that they have enough momentum, enough confidence that they can maintain their home field and get a huge victory over the Green Bay Packers and make a tremendous statement to the league that these Vikings are for real. So that's what I'm going to take the Minnesota Vikings to beat the Green Bay Packers. Indianapolis at Atlanta. Indy and Atlanta. This is so hard because just when Andrew Luck had that phenomenal game a couple weeks ago against the Broncos, he threw about 280 yards, the running game was solid, and you finally saw the Colt team that we all thought they could be. What happens? Andrew Luck goes down with an abdominal injury and a lacerated kidney. He's out 2 to 6 weeks. He could be out a month, or he probably will be out a month according to ESPN and the NFL Network. So that'll be huge. However, at the same time, I do believe this is the opportunity for Matt Hasselbeck to prove to people like me that possibly, with how much is on the line for Chuck Pagano, who I believe will be out of the year, unless they don't win the Super Bowl, which they're not going to, at this rate. And you need to win as many games as you can. And I thought Matt Hasselbeck, and just by the numbers in the 2 games, was clearly outplaying Andrew Luck. So Matt Hasselbeck will get, and he's had another week to prepare for the Falcons. He will get at least 3 more starts to prove his worth. And I believe these are all, besides Pittsburgh probably, that'd be the only game I think he would lose. The other 2 starts are winnable games. Starting this Sunday at Atlanta. Atlanta has fallen off the map. They have gone from 5-0 to 6-4. They are on the verge of being the 5th team in NFL history to start 5-0 and actually miss the playoffs. They're on the verge of that. And it's just to me where Atlanta has kind of fallen into the San Diego Baltimore trap of the NFC where they haven't been able to close games now. Where earlier in the year, in their 5-game winning streak, their first game, they come back against Philadelphia, and they get that big interception to win that game. They come back down from 10 against the Giants. They win that game. In Dallas, they outscore the Cowboys 22-0 after being down 28-17 to win that game. And then they blow out Houston, and then they take an overtime game, a pick-6 interception to win that game.